What's going on, everybody? It's your host, Dominic Peterson, host of the Duck Zone 503 podcast, where we talk all things Oregon football. If you're a first-time viewer or a long-time viewer, welcome in. Kindly ask that you hit that like and subscribe button. And also, if you feel like it, share that video. But most importantly, guys, word of mouth, telling your friends and family about the podcast, the Duck Zone 503 podcast, that is. Really appreciate everybody who locks in, hits that subscribe button, follows the social medias. Really appreciate how we're growing on here. It's been big. All right, guys. So on today's episode, we're going to be recapping the Oregon Ducks signing day 2023 and how it went down, and just giving my overall thoughts and analysis on the 2023 class, breaking down some of the guys that committed, some of the guys that didn't commit. I'm sure you guys know already. Let's get right into it. So overall, we finally got to see what a full year of recruiting under Dane Lanning and that staff looks like, right? They were in play for some big guys, and we'll talk about it. As you know, last year, Dan Lanning was hired early January last year when the whole Cristobal leaving debacle went down. That whole coaching staff went to Miami right before signing day, and it kind of crippled that 2022 class, but it kind of made the fireworks a little more exciting than this year because you got a new coach. What is he going to do? Is he going to bring guys from Georgia? He's from the South, right? And he did bring in some big guys, and Josh Connerly and Jaleel Florence, right, in late, and close real hard, which is good, and which is what I was really anticipating. I mean, Dan Lanning was really looking as one of those really good closers on recruits. I mean, getting in there late and stealing recruits from these top schools. He was doing that. I mean, he came in early January, and last class was really doing that. Stealing Jaleel Florence from USC, Josh Connerly, 5-star kid, stole him from Washington, number one O lineman in Washington last year. That was big, right? That was huge. So kind of the same similar situation here with 2023 elite prospects, Roderick Pleasant and Nicholas Harbor. Everybody was talking about Nicholas Harbor for a long time, right? A lot of anticipation for this. And man, I was looking forward to seeing how Dan Lanning would close, and he certainly did. He certainly did. I went ahead and recorded my, National Signing Day 2023 prediction video Monday night. And then I put it out Tuesday morning. Wednesday was signing day, right? Today's Thursday. And with how fast info comes out, I'm recording 2 days, realistically before signing day. And the wild media world we live in today, the news intel was running wild, and I gave you guys prediction. I went 0 for 2. I'm not afraid to admit it. No way I'm an expert or journalist. I pay attention from the outside and give information and pay attention the best I can and give my best assumption. And I had Nicholas Harbor to Oregon, and I had Roderick Pleasant to USC just based off the intel. But late Tuesday night, talking to a certain coach on the coaching staff. I'm not going to announce who it was because they want to remain anonymous. He let me know some good intel that Oregon had a very good shot at landing Roderick Pleasant. So I went ahead and changed my pick that night, and it pretty much let me know that Pleasant was going to be a Duck Wednesday. As far as Nicholas Harbor went, it was a wild roller coaster. I mean, even for the experts like Steve Wiltfong, right? I mean, these guys just couldn't get it right. Justin Hopkins, Oregon insider, these guys were scrambling. I was scrambling, and I put my prediction in early. I think I was one of the first people to actually put a prediction in as far as I've seen predictions go for Oregon on Oregon side of things. There's already some South Carolina predictions for Harbor at that moment on Monday, but I went ahead off the visit, I just thought it went really well. Usually these experts, they know where a kid is going, right? These top recruits, they pretty much know where they're going until they announce. Not in Harbor's case, okay? This literally was the last 30 minutes, pretty much. The last 30 minutes, one guy knew where he was going, one expert, and that was Steve Wiltfong. We'll get to it in a minute. So Monday night, Harbor's coming off that Oregon visit. I'm hearing nothing but good reports about it. Checked out Hayward Field, met the coaching staff, met the track coaches, met the players, fans chanting, "We want Harbor." It looked like a great visit, and it was. It was an excellent visit. I'm sure Oregon knocked out the park. Phil Knight was on campus talking to Red L. Spinks, Nicholas Harbor's marketing and branding assistant, pretty much we'll call him. And so I put my Monday thoughts on my notes. I go ahead and say why I think Oregon will land him, and just based off that visit, how late it is, right before signing day, I thought that visit would be fresh in Nicholas Harbor's mind. There wasn't bad travel. If there was bad travel, that's kind of a far plane ride to back to Washington D.C. But it just seemed like everything was going in Oregon's direction right at the right moment. So I go ahead and put my prediction in. Well, Tuesday morning, as I'm putting out that prediction and telling you guys that Harbor's going to come to Oregon, all of a sudden the narrative starts changing, right? And it starts going South Carolina's way. And I'm sitting there like, oh man, I might really be a curse, right? Who knows? And Wednesday, come Wednesday, now it's signing day, all the experts start shifting towards Oregon or over South Carolina. Harbor's going to Oregon. Things are looking up for Oregon. I mean, Wiltfong, rivals, they're all saying Oregon. And I'm just going nuts. Things are going frenzied. Ducks are ready. Duck fans are ready. 30 minutes before Harbor commits, 247 Sports expert Steve Wiltfong puts that crystal ball in, and he puts it in for South Carolina. And at that moment, now when you get Wiltfonged, let me tell you about Wiltfong. This guy has he's been in the industry for years. He has connects everywhere to every school, every coach he can get on the phone and talk to, every parent he can get on the phone and talk to. He has a 90+% accuracy rating in calling these crystal balls. So when he puts in a crystal ball, you're pretty much knowing where a guy's going. And it took him 30 minutes before Harbor's commitment, literally 30 minutes to put that in. And I was just like, man, I hope he's wrong, man. And I had a confidence. They do the confidence of 1 through 10 on there on 247 Sports. He had a confidence of 6. So he was not necessarily super confident about Harbor going to South Carolina. It could have been Oregon. I'm sure it was really kept under wraps, this whole recruitment. I mean, it was hard for experts to get this thing where it was going. But I just, even me, I thought, based off the way it was going, I'm not a homer in no way. I know I'm an Oregon fan, but when I talk sports, I really don't like to be a homer. I don't like to say my team's the best at this and this and this just because I'm a fan. I realistically go off numbers and what I see, right? And it realistically felt like Oregon was going to land Harbor. I mean, based off my point there, I predicted Broderick Pleasant to USC, right? He ended up at Duck. So I kind of just flip-flopped on my predictions here. So Harbor goes to South Carolina. Congratulations to the Gamecocks. Harbor 6'5", 225 pounds, number 1 listed athlete in the 2023 class, number 1 player in Washington, D.C., number 19th in all the nation. That's according to 247 Sports. So big time. I'm told his girlfriend goes to South Carolina, and distance was a big factor for mom. So when you got your parent not really liking how far things are, and you got your girlfriend going somewhere else where you're being recruited, I mean, that's a tough choice, right? No matter how much money you're getting offered, no matter what the deal is, it's a tough choice. So Oregon is officially now 0-2 versus girlfriends when it comes to recruiting, aka Peyton Bowen. If you guys don't know, Peyton Bowen flipped from Notre Dame to Oregon, and then after his commitment video of him saying he's going to go to Oregon, comes out like a day or two later that he actually signs his letter of intent to Oklahoma because his girlfriend went there. His mom wanted him to go to Oklahoma. So moms and girlfriends, man, they rule the world. It looks like when it comes to recruits. So they're 0-2 versus them. It's all jokes, but they are though. But it's tough when it comes to and that's the thing with Oregon. We'll get into it. When it comes to distance, that's always been a problem for Oregon recruiting. And every single year, it's always tough because Oregon doesn't have a lot of prep recruits, elite prep recruits here in the state. I mean, it's very, very rare that we get a 4-star, 5-star kid here at the state of Oregon on the high school level. But don't you fret, don't you frown, because signing day was not done. It certainly wasn't done. 20 minutes right before we find out that he's going to South Carolina. 20 minutes later, 2023 4-star defensive back Broderick Pleasant is set to commit. He's going to be choosing from UCLA, USC, and Oregon. It looks like those are his top 3 schools. Monday night, I go ahead and record my preview telling you guys I think he's going to USC, because I just, USC, he was supposed to come to Oregon on an unofficial visit on the previous Saturday. USC coaches were rumored to push Broderick Pleasant to cancel the Oregon visit so they could get an in-home visit with Broderick Pleasant. And that's what happened. I mean, when you got a recruit listening to a school, I just thought that school would have a great hand in the recruitment. And like you said, like I said, I'm not an insider. Okay. I don't really talk to too much parents or recruit. I don't go out of my way really to do that unless it's like, everybody's watching them, kind of like this situation. So I did go out of my way here and talk to some coaches, and that's when I got my intel Tuesday night that there was a very good chance that we're going to be getting Pleasant. So, this is my speculation. I think they canceled the Oregon visit, the Pleasant family, and took USC's in-home visit the weekend before, because if you watch the commitment video from Roderick Pleasant and you watch his dad behind him, you can't tell me he does not look amused, man. And that's just an observation. It's just speculation, but I think his dad might have wanted him to go to USC, because you look at everybody else, they're jumping, they're recording. His dad's just kind of standing there with his arms folded like this, shaking his head. Now, it's just speculation on my part. I don't want to make everybody, think his dad's against Oregon. He might very well be with Oregon. That's just speculation on body language on that. I don't read too much into that, though. So the Ducks get a very, very elite defensive back in the class of 2023, capping this 2023 class off. Pleasant is 5'11", 180 pounds, number 9 defensive back in the 2023 class, number 7 player in California, number 91st player nationally. So top 100 player in the nation, top 10 in his position. Big time get for the Ducks there. He's literally the fastest player in this class, guys. He broke the California State 100-meter record as a junior. You guys can see the video of him running that 100-meter as a junior on my Instagram or Twitter. Go ahead to @DuckZone503 to go check that out. Overall, Oregon continues to add premier talent in this defensive back room. I mean, this defensive back room that needs a lot of help. It's a very, very, very fast and young defensive back room with a whole lot of potential young studs like Jaleel Florence, Jaleel Tucker, Roderick Pleasant. All those 3 guys right there have elite speed, super elite speed. They just need the reps and the snaps to get better at the college level, get on the field and, get a better understanding of how to process the offense, what's coming, and what coverages to check into on what looks, right? That all comes with playing and getting snaps. So these young guys, man, they can use their speed. They're just going to have to up here get that mental game, and I'm excited for it. So let's go ahead and get into my thoughts on the class of 2023 overall. On National Signing Day 2023, Oregon misses out on 5-star Nicholas Harbor, but never the doubt, they still land a big one in Roderick Pleasant. Oregon finished number 8 nationally in both 247 Sports and On3 Sports 2023 team recruiting rankings, which is big time being a top 10 class. Ducks also finished with the number 1 recruiting class in the Pac-12 for the 5th straight year. Big time for the Ducks. This just tells you how the Oregon brand is growing. We are seeing Oregon beat out schools like Washington and USC on the West Coast for major recruits. I mean, pretty consistently now. Pleasant from Sarah, right? JSerra, usually a school made for USC commits. When you see a kid come out of that school, it's usually a lot of USC commits, and Oregon once again goes into Southern California, USC, UCLA territory, and steals another one. They pulled Jaleel Florence and Jaleel Tucker last year from that area. They just pulled Mateo Ugiagle from the LA area. And all these recruits that I'm talking about were being recruited heavily from USC, and USC wanted them. And I mean, I think you can pretty much say now that Oregon is the team to beat in recruiting when it comes to West Coast recruiting. I mean, USC, UCLA, they're going to leave the Pac-12 and go to the Big Ten. We'll see how that factors into recruiting after that move happens. But if you tell a kid, do you really want to hop on a plane and go play halfway across the country 6 games of the year, or do you want to go play here on the West Coast where your family can travel to every game? That's a great pitch, right? To kids who want to play Oregon and stay on the West Coast. Now, eventually, this is for another podcast episode, Oregon's going to have to get out of the Pac-12 eventually. But just because of dollar numbers and view numbers with the other schools, it's just massively unfair because Oregon gets the majority of it. But that's for another podcast. Let's continue here on my thoughts for the 2023 class overall. I always said if you can consistently recruit in the top 10, you can be competitive for enough for a college football spot. Okay. If you can recruit and get a top 10 class consistently and stack 2, 3, 4 classes, which Oregon has for the last 5, 6, 7 years, they've been pretty up there. They can compete for a college football playoff spot. And on the field, Oregon has been right there in the last couple of years. I mean, 2019, they were right there. This last year, they, Bo Nix injury away from really, they could run the table. These little things, man, and it comes close. And Oregon, this is the thing. They could have very well made this 2023 class a top 5 class. No doubt they could have. I mean, they were in the top 3s for multiple other 5 stars right there in the running. Dante Moore with the late flip to UCLA, Peyton Boeing with going to Oklahoma, like I announced earlier, David Hicks coming down, to the wire there with Texas A&M and Oregon, Caden Proctor going to Alabama, but Oregon was right there, no doubt. I mean, these are big time guys that Oregon was just right there. And what do you notice with a lot of these guys is a lot of these guys are not from the West Coast and they're going to teams in the South. Dante Moore's case, he went with Chip Kelly on a late visit and wanted to come to the West Coast. But other than that, I mean, it's hard to get these guys to Oregon, man. It's really, really hard. Distance plays a factor, kids' families. I mean, and you got these other schools who have won national championships. I mean, I love Oregon. We haven't won a national championship, right? You got schools with multiple Heisman winners. We have one. You got schools with blue bloods, right? Blue bloods. And they're way closer to home. So it just makes more sense for these kids to go there in their own mind, right? And I have nothing against Oregon. I want these kids to come to Oregon, but I just put myself in their shoes, and it's like, man, like if I was a kid and I grew up watching Oregon, USC, Arizona, like those are the schools I'd be looking at. I wouldn't look at Iowa or Iowa State, for example, if I was a recruit. You know what I'm saying? That's just my example here on why Oregon, it's really hard for them to contend with these Southern schools just because that's where the hotbed of the talent is. All those players, like I announced just earlier, would have easily propelled this class to a top 5 class. And, this class might be remembered as the what if class because there's just a whole bit. What if we got that guy? What if we got that guy? Either way, guys, what I'm telling you is that Dan Lanning is adding his guys for his system. And this class had 29 overall commitments. That's a lot of guys. Most of them already on campus and early enrollees. Last year, there was only one early enrollee. Dan Lanning was only to get one guy out of the class to come on early. This year, we got 16 early enrollees. I mean, that's just huge amount of numbers for guys. And that's including the transfers and stuff. Man, it's big. That's absolutely great for team chemistry. Plus, you get spring ball reps, that whole spring ball, lifting, all of that. You get to know the playbook faster, get used to college life and adjust. I mean, these are big time things that need to happen, and it takes time. Okay, it's not just something that happens like that to pick up a playbook and get to know it, especially if you're a prep player coming in. So to get these guys on campus now, get used to the college life, get to classes, get with their teammates and really just bond is a great deal for Oregon. So here's the deal. Oregon recruiting in the last 5 to 7 years has absolutely just taken off, okay? If you were to look at a graph of Oregon recruiting on a graph, you just see the line just going like this, right, steadily up. I mean, in the past few years, in the past years, and besides the past couple 5, 6, 7 years, you would be lucky to ever see a Duck, to see a 5-star player and the Ducks, be in the running for that. Yet alone maybe land 2 or 3 4-stars at that in a class in the past, right? Say what you want about them, say what you want, I get it. But ever since Willie Taggart came onto this campus, he showed you that you can recruit here at a high level in Oregon. Then you brought in Mario Cristobal, who just really propelled that with his connections from down south into top 10 classes. Now, you've seen some of these recruits file out to the transfer portal, and some of them were overhyped, and that happens. That happens, okay? I'm gonna give you a little hint here. If you guys didn't know, some of these recruiting industry numbers are meant to get you hyped up and get your dollar. They tell you what you want to hear, basically. That's why you see some of these 5-star kids not pan out, because if they're committed to a big time school, let's say for Ohio State, these industry expert are gonna tell you how good this guy is and how good he is for your school, because if you hear what you like, you're more intended to spend your dollar. That's why a lot of these crystal balls come out wrong. That's why a lot of these experts come out wrong. It's all kind of a sham a little bit. I mean, I'm not trying to take away from any of these guys, because they do tremendous work and they most of the time are right. But I do see the game, and I'm giving you guys a little drop on that. Okay. But never the doubt, I mean, these classes have been just elite for Oregon, right? Mario Cristobal coming in, Willie Taggart kind of propelled that thing up. And, you're right there with at least 7 or 8 guys that could get you a top 5 class. And what affected that the most, though? What kind of stopped Oregon from getting that top 5 class? And in my opinion, like I said, it's distance. Something that's always hurt Oregon recruiting is distance. I mean, you got to get to find the elite talents all in the South, Texas. I mean, Cali's your closest state. You've been doing a great job, always really doing, Southern California recruiting, starting with Anthony Thomas out there. I mean, California's always been a hotbed for Oregon right there, going a state over to go get talent. But Oregon's starting to really reach into the South now, especially Texas. Texas was a big one this last class. And if they could keep building those pipelines, like a Texas pipeline, Florida was becoming a big one with Mario Cristobal, but kind of seemed like it fell off now. But if they can reach in those states like Florida, Texas, Louisiana, California, I mean, those are big time states with a lot of talent, and build those pipelines, that would be huge, right? The thing with distance is moms and dads. Okay, at the end of the day, these are kids in high school who are, their moms and dads is going to be the first time letting their kids go off and do their own thing, and they don't really want their kids thousands of miles away. And the kid might think they want to do that at the time, but when they really get out there and they're all alone, it gets lonely, man. It can get hard, especially if you're not like a top 5-star. You're not getting NIL deals. It can get tough for you, man. It can get real tough. So that's the big thing, is distance. That's why it's always been a hard thing for recruiting for Oregon. And like I said, 0-2 versus girlfriends, man. You got to get those girlfriends on your side. No, but in all serious, guys, most of the time, most of the talent is in the South and on the East Coast, okay? And that's why you see teams like Alabama, Georgia, most of those SEC schools have just been so dominant. And nowadays, a lot of the SEC schools, as of late, last 5, 6, 7 years, they've been getting a lot of the California kids to go to the South, just because that's where all the championships are coming, right? Oregon landed 1 5-star, according to 247 Sports, and that's in Jerion Dickey. Now, Mateo Ugiagale, he was a 5-star when he committed. He got downgraded to a 4-star in the final 247 Sports composite rankings. Georgia, for example, just won a national championship, 5 5-stars. Alabama, now this is absurd. This isn't every year that a team will do this. 9 5-stars. Okay. Oregon almost landed 5-star Nicholas Harbor today. Freak athlete, 6'5", can run like crazy, like a cheetah. Well, guess what? Georgia has like 3 of those guys, right? I mean, that's just how it is with recruiting, man. If you can recruit at elite levels, and trust me, Oregon's building there. They're contending with recruits. They're close. The guys that are going to Georgia, the guys that are going to Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, these blue blood schools, right? They're right there, Oregon's right there. And that's how Georgia, Alabama have built their dynasties, is through recruiting. That's why recruiting is so important. I mean, if you're a college coach, it's 50-50 on the field. How do you even call it 70-30? You're 70% recruiting and 30% coaching on the field. That's college coach for you right there. Oregon got Mateo. Okay, Mateo Ugiagale, one of the best edge rushers in the 2023 class. Well, guess what? Alabama landed 3 of the top 5 edge rushers in this class. So that goes to my point, is like, yeah, Oregon is getting a 5-star here and there. And they're slowly building and doing it. And just go back 10 years ago, they weren't even getting close to 5 stars. They were lucky to land a couple 4 stars. Maybe they'd get one every 4 or 5 years. They get 1 5-star. Now it's becoming consistent. Okay. Over the last few years, Oregon has landed a few 5-stars. Ty Thompson, right? That offensive lineman, he didn't work out. He went to BYU, but that was a big landing, at that time. And not every 5-star works out, but if you can land multiple, like 9 5-stars in a class, I know it's almost impossible to do. It's Nick Saban level, right? But if you're able to do that, my point is you're stacking talent. And when you're on the field and you got your first string guys in and they're really good going against the other team's first string guys in, but you got your second, third, fourth string guy is just as good as that first string guy because of recruiting. When the other team brings in their second, third string guy, it's not as good. And you just got draft pick after draft pick. I mean, Georgia lost 15 guys in the draft. 15 guys. And they just come back and win a national championship and boat race everybody because of recruiting. Year after year, it has to be elite. Year after year. You can't just have one good class and call it good. I mean, Texas A&M, they had one good class. Now what are they doing? Right? 5 and 7 on the field. You need to have multiple, and you need to develop. Okay, you can't run Jimbo's offense. That's another thing. Point is sure you can contend for a college football playoff spot, get in the college football playoff, and pitch that to recruits all day by landing top 10 classes. And that's what Oregon's been doing. Okay, they've been good. But if you truly want to be elite and you want to contend for national championships in those top schools like Georgia and Alabama, you're going to have to land multiple 5-stars and do it multiple years. And that's the challenge of being a college coach. Oregon was certainly close to doing it this class. Leave no doubt about it. Certainly close. If they just landed 3 or 4 more 5-stars like they were certainly close to doing, man, let me tell you, they could have had a historic class. Never the doubt, I think this was a good class. And you could be optimistic, or I see the pessimistic fans on Dan Lanning's recruiting class this year and how he finished it on National Signing Day. So there's the optimistic side, right? Dan Lanning was nearly able to make this Oregon have an historic recruiting class, 3 or 4 commitments away. And, the momentum has been building since the Willie Taggart era for Oregon. And they're so close to realistically contending for top 5 classes in and out. I mean, the brand is known nationwide, and Dan Lanning is getting very, very close. Very, very close. Distance will always be a challenge for Dan Lanning, as the state of Oregon does not produce much elite high school talent. On top of that, Dan Lanning has not done much so far here at Oregon, okay? He's off to a great start. Don't get me wrong, 10-win seasons last year under his belt, but he's going to have to continue success to pitch to recruits. I mean, when you're walking into living rooms where Kirby Smart has been in that living room, Lincoln Riley, I mean, these are guys who have been there, done that, Nick Saban, and you're trying to recruit. You're going to have to show you can do it on the field as well. So I tend to be optimistic. I think the way this thing has just been building and trending for Oregon year in and year out, and the way Oregon has just been steadily right there in the top 10, if Dan Lanning can keep building and showing fans what he can do on the field, and he had a great start, 10-win season, right? Look at the past coaches, Chip Kelly, Mike Bellotti, all in their second year have had great seasons. So we'll see how Dan Lanning's second season goes. And if he does have a great season, gets to the Rose Bowl, gets a college football playoff berth, who knows, wins the conference. If he gets these accomplishments, he can pitch that to recruits, and we'll see how this goes, especially in the NIL era of things, constantly expanding. It's going to be great. Then there's the pessimistic side of things, right, that you could have. Okay, sure, Dan Lanning, was close to landing some top recruits in this class and making an historic class. Sure, that's great. But the reality is he didn't. Okay? He didn't land those guys. The reality is he did get out recruited on those recruits more than a few times, and he wasn't able to land those guys. Will this trend continue? Dan Lanning, elite prospects to top schools, but he never actually got the job done. Will he be able to attract more than 1 or 2 5-stars to Oregon? We're going to have to see it. Over the last few years, Oregon has only been able to land about 1 or 2 5-stars. I want to start seeing 3, 4, 5. I want to see that trend start going up. I tend to be optimistic. Okay. My answer is I just gave you 2 examples of an optimistic fan or a pessimistic fan. This is only year 2 of Dan Lanning. Okay. This is only year 2. I think it's only fair that we sit and wait. Okay. And before we judge his recruiting. Okay. I tend to have more optimistic view because Oregon has never really recruited at this level, and it's a very good sign that Dan Lanning is sustaining it and nearly growing on the success of the history of these classes. Right, they're right there at number 8, top 10 class. Nothing to complain about on my end. This is his first full year to recruit to Oregon. This will now be his first full year with the majority of the roster of the players he brought in. I mean, I think 80 to 90% of the roster will be Dan Lanning's guys that he brought in. So year 2 is going to be very interesting to watch. I think year 1, you've seen Dan Lanning's system and what it could do, but I don't think you had the players exactly. You had some players who you needed, but you didn't have exactly what you needed. Now, Dan Lanning gets another year of the transfer portal, another year of bringing prep players in. He gets Bo Nix back, his leader. It's going to be a really fun year, guys. And he caps off National Signing Day 2023 with a bang by signing Roderick Pleasant. I have really nothing to complain about. Yeah, you could what if it. What if we sign this player? What if can Dan Lanning close? I think he can. I think it's just really hard here. You're battling location, you're battling travel, you're battling where the talent is, right? It's far away from you. And you're still landing top 10 classes. How could you complain, right? So that's my take on National Signing Day 2023 and the 2023 class. Really excited about guys like Jayon Dickey Mateo, Ugiangale, Ashton Porter, Kenyon Sadiq. I mean, I think these are guys that are going to play early and have big-time careers here at Oregon. Roderick Pleasant, welcome as a Duck. I got some get-to-know series interviews, guys, on the Oregon Duck 2023 signees. I got Gerd Norris, Wilson on the channel. Austin Novosad is a good one I landed on here. And who else? Terrence Green, defensive lineman. So few guys. I'm working on getting more guys onto the channel as we speak. So if you guys are interested in content like that, make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you're liking the videos. That always helps with the algorithm. And if you feel like it, go ahead and share the video. But most importantly, tell your friends and family about the podcast. Word of mouth, telling your friends and family about the Duck Zone 503 podcast on YouTube. I'm your host, Dominic Peterson. Really appreciate everybody who locks in with me. Always, guys, it's always go Ducks. I'll see you guys in the next podcast.